Hi, Steve. How you doing? It's been a while. I'm glad to speak with you again.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
Yeah. So today we're going to just talk about how public speaking is really a sales situation, right? People are
Yeah.
selling themselves when they're public speaking,
Mhm.
as well as, salespeople like doing it the reverse. So
Right.
tell me a little bit about your background. I know that you're a realtor. I know that you were involved with Toastmasters a
Yeah.
while back, as I was. And let's start there.
Sure. I got into real estate back in early 2000s. It's something that I've been in and away from for the probably the past 15 years or so, and just returning back now with EXP Realty and working on some really cool projects. But how that started for me, first of all, real estate was something that I wasn't really looking for it. I kind of fell into it. I was actually working for a fitness company and was prospecting to try and get corporate fitness accounts. And one of the companies happened to be a real estate company that I wouldn't leave alone. I was very, very persistent prospecting them. And eventually I wound up developing a relationship and then getting a job there and then getting my real estate license. And then that's how got into the industry. So I had no plan on that. It sort of just happened. But while I was probably a few years after I got into the industry, I had a desire to learn how to speak publicly. I didn't have a problem doing sales presentations and speaking with people one-on-one, but I really wanted to try to master the fear of speaking in front of groups of people and not fearing what it is that people thought about me. So I joined Toastmasters and went through an entire experience there that took me from being completely frightened to get up in front of the room without being able to stand behind a podium and notes to eventually being able to speak off the cuff or improvising or bringing together situations very quick. And so this was a skill that was developed over time, and working on their script, working on how they're going to speak to a client to get that end result so that they can best service them. It was the same thing with speaking. When you're up in front of a room and you're speaking in front of an audience, you uh, are essentially always paying attention to what works and what kind of cues you get from the audience, because the things that you say, whether they're funny, whether they're poignant, whether they get a result, or whether they help somebody learn something, you begin to figure out, this is exactly what I need to say when I go up there. Now, is that going to be perfectly scripted? No, you're always going to be trying to deal with something in the moment, as you are with a presentation. No matter how much you script your presentation for a one-on-one, there's always something that happens in the conversation that takes you off, and then you can come back. But the thing that I learned throughout that entire process, one thing from my one of my mentors, Craig Valentine, who's a 1999 world champion at public speaking, and he would always say that speaking is selling and selling is speaking. And a lot of speakers who don't believe that they're in sales, and there's a lot of salespeople who don't believe that they are in fact public speakers and that they are one and the same. So when a speaker decides to work on his sales skills, or a salesperson decides to work on their speaking skills, they are essentially improving and raising their game to the next level. Something I
Totally.
thought was really cool. Yeah, something I thought was really cool was I didn't know about this because I don't follow hockey intensely, but one of the things I learned about hockey players is that in their off season they play lacrosse, right? The ones that are very serious, right?
Mhm.
And I guess there's, so you might look at the two sports and say, okay, well, what's similar about these? Not very much, I would imagine. Again, I don't know them to a great extent, but what I understood that why they were doing it is because there were certain muscles and skills developed in lacrosse that were a perfect fit for hockey. So playing the lacrosse made them better hockey players. So I parallel that and say, a person who is speaking and wants to study selling is going to make themselves a better speaker, and vice versa. So a lot of people might be thinking, well, I'm a salesperson. I just speak with people one-on-one. I don't want to talk from the stage. I don't want to talk in front of people. But what happens when you do something like join Toastmasters, where you put yourself up every week in front of 20 people and deliver a speech that doesn't have to be anything about the topic that you're selling. It just has to be you speaking about yourself personally. And what happens is that you begin, every time you do this, it's like you're trading in fear for confidence, trading in fear for confidence. So for some people, they don't have a problem with it. Some people will say, I don't have a problem. I'll get up in front of people and I'll say whatever it is that I want to say. Which is great. Now, then what you need to decide to learn is, what's the skill set that I need to learn to make sure that my audience is satisfied? Because a lot of people have no problem getting up in front of people, but being in front of people is not the best place for them, right?
Yes.
For whatever the reason might be, until they develop the skill of maybe being succinct, or learning to be a good storyteller, or learning to read the audience and bring them back from wherever you've taken them. And by doing that, you raise your skill level. And what I noticed for me was, I was in Toastmasters probably for several months, and I was doing a lot of prospecting on the phone. That was in my real estate business then at the time. And people started to say things to me that I hadn't met, but I would talk on the phone, and they would just give me little compliments, like, you're a pretty good speaker. And I thought, well, what does that have to do with listing your house? Like, I appreciate the compliment, but they were going out of their way to say something about, and here's the thing, just myself, just like you and anyone else, I could speak. Of course, I could articulate. That was not an issue. But because I had been forcing myself to get up in front of audiences to speak and tell stories and face my greatest fear, it was confidence that they were sensing. What they were complimenting me on was my confidence.
Oh, for sure.
That made them want to, I feel, do business with me as a result. So I think that when a salesperson makes a decision, yes, I'm going to practice the art of public speaking. Then you can definitely take it all to the next level, especially if you're somebody who is nervous in front of an audience. If you're nervous in front of an audience, chances are you're probably nervous in front of a prospect, but you've gotten comfortable with your presentation, and you've gotten comfortable with who the type of person is in your target audience. But if you'll get out of your comfort zone as a speaker and find that skill within yourself, it transfers over, and some really cool things can happen as a result.
Oh, for sure. I mean, thanks for all of that though, Steve. For sure. I mean, the first thing I would say in terms of presenting is, if you're someone new starting out, understand how to have a proper structure, a great intro, great body conclusion. What's a starter question? How are you going to close the presentation? These are very basic things. And then, of course, find what your style is. Are you more of the off the cuff presenter? Are you better, very well prepared? Are you very, organized? Are you better at storytelling? Like you said, are you, how do you relate to your audience? Do you like to ask them questions throughout? Do you like to save your questions for the end? Like, these are all things to keep in mind. And I like what you said, like, about how you got into real estate. I just want to go back to that, because it's not those things that we always plan that happen. It's sometimes, one thing leads to another, and you fell into it, you said.
That's
now,
right.
A lot of people, when I talk to them, they say the same thing. I just noticed with business professionals. Oh, well, like if you say, well, how did you get into, XYZ? And they're like, oh yeah, well, I just fell into it. Right? Like, you hear this a lot, and it doesn't matter what industry, this question is posed. Like, they always say the same thing. Well, I just fell into this.
Yeah.
Because certain skill sets lead to other things happening naturally. And I think that's what you're getting at today. Things happen and unfold naturally. You can't force an accountant to become a lawyer. You can't force a lawyer to be someone who runs around the circus. It doesn't go. You have to be yourself. You have to be natural in your style of presenting. Everything has to come naturally. And now moving on to your main point, which is public speaking, helping you with sales. I totally agree, because the one-on-one presentation is one style. Now, I've seen great presenters out there sell really well, on stage, they do it naturally. They're not, and it's what you said, it's the confidence level. The confidence level is there. So they do this stuff naturally, and then the audience responds to that. It's not being perfect, it's being confident.
Yeah.
It's not about perfection, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. When you say natural, like I think, I mean, I know for myself anyways, that it's something that it never really came naturally there. I think everybody has the natural ability to speak, but it's the act of getting up to the front of the room and going through that process that changes you, so that you can now begin to articulate in a way that, has all the structures that you were talking about earlier.
And and the more in tune you are with your audience, the better you will present as well. Like I remember doing presentations like 20 years ago, and I was just so nervous with certain groups.
Yeah.
And then like with other groups, I would just like it would be amazing, right? Like night and day difference.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say nervous, here's what I'm talking about. I would read my audience and I could tell like their personalities were way more structured, way more serious. And I'm just like, I have that in me, but I found they were way above that. And I'm going, how am I going to relate to these people? How do
Yeah.
I relate to them? And I had a hard time, and I'll never forget it. I whipped through that talk. Like, I remember it was supposed to be like 45 minutes. I was done in 10 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not having any fun. Like, it was awful. It was an awful feeling. I hid it well, I think. But like, I wasn't me. I just wasn't myself. And then over time, getting used to different audiences, different age groups, different, because a lot of it is having that commonality with your audience. And like a 15-year-old presenting to like a bunch of 40-year-olds can't relate to them, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. They can't relate, right? As an extreme example.
Yeah.
But the more you know, and the more time goes on, and the more comfortable you get out of your comfort zone in different situations, the better you're going to present. And back to sales reps, back to selling, right? It's different to sell one-to-one versus getting up in front of a group. But if it's done right, and you repeatedly learn the type of audience you're dealing with, which you should as your target market,
Yeah.
then you kind of solve these issues, and people respond well to confident speakers.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something powerful about that. So I
Yeah.
couldn't agree with you more. They work and feed off of each other, right?
That's it. That's
Yeah.
absolutely it. And then what you're talking about, obviously, with in your whatever your industry is, if you have the opportunity, if you have two people who are equal caliber in an organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equal salespeople, the one who can get up and speak articulately, eloquently about the business is going to be seen as the leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's often the difference. So, and of course, and in today's day and age, everything, like if you're not making videos, for example, or getting an opportunity to speak to, like, it's a powerful thing. Like, I'm sure people have had this experience before, but like, I know, for example, when I go to a networking event, that I can go, it's such a powerful feeling that if there's maybe 50 or 100 people there, and they're going to give you an opportunity to speak for a couple of moments, and you've had this experience where nobody in the room knows who you are, and then you get up and you tell a quick story for 2 minutes, and now everybody's lining up to give you their business card.
Yeah, it's
Right?
amazing because it's vulnerability, right?
Right.
People like to see a little
yeah.
bit of that.
It's vulnerability, but it's also how you the like the massive impact, like how the power of public speaking. So if you're somebody who sells cars, and you want to get up and say something for 30 seconds about selling cars, and maybe inject a little bit of humor in there, well, but you're thinking, oh man, I don't know, how many times have you been at a networking event and you're like, I want to get up there and say something. That voice inside of me knows what it wants to say, but maybe somebody else intimidated you, or you thought, I can't do it, or you started making, or voices inside your head started saying, no, don't do that, you're going to look like an idiot, or whatever. It's the going to the things like the Toastmasters and those types of groups that give you the confidence to step up in the spotlight when it really matters for your business. And then in doing so, you now holding that microphone, you have now met it's like holding that microphone and speaking for 30 seconds is the equivalent of shaking every person's hand in that room.
Right.
Everybody knows who you are, and it changes the room. And then, of course, for your business as well, if you're a salesperson who normally does one-on-one presentations, deciding, how am I going to reach more people at once? So maybe you don't like making videos, which I never thought that I ever would start doing, and now I've probably done a couple hundred of them. It just allows you to reach people on on a mass scale where you can do just a little bit of seeding about what it is that you do and talk mostly about something else. And you're still going to get people saying, hey, you know, I saw that video you did about being present, but you mentioned something about real estate. You sell houses? And
Yeah.
it's not like that unexpected, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Did I do it intentionally? Yeah, but I didn't want to get on the video and start selling and talking just about real estate. I wanted to talk about something, you know, that's mutually beneficial or beneficial to the audience that I know they're going to use in their everyday life. And somewhere in there, I'm going to seed and say something about, you know, what it is that I do. Or, you know, I was having, you know, I was out showing a doing a presentation for a real estate client the other day. And I've done that sort of thing at networking events or on videos. And because I'm publicly speaking now and putting myself out in front of multiple people and playing that numbers game with just one presentation, I may get a couple of leads that comes from that.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
and that's just doing it unintentionally.
Yeah, and I love that approach because, you know, there's that direct sales approach, and then there's this what you're talking about as a soft sell and an indirect sell, and it's powerful,
Yeah.
right? There's so many ways to go about things, and I like this style because, you know, how many realtors do you know out there that just push so hard and are so in your face? It's like that car salesman analogy, like in your face, like, now, I want it now. Are you ready? Are you ready? And then they call you again. Are you ready? Are you ready? It's like, oh my God. Right? But what you're saying is accurate. And, you know, you're also talking about building that, finding that common ground, the commonality with you and the other individual, or with you in a large group audience. What is the common ground? And knowing the common ground, knowing where you relate, is what is going to hold it together, and that is what people remember, right? If you're able to do that, and you can't always do it depending on how much time you have and how much you know, but if you could do that as often as possible on a regular basis, you're going to make a huge impact. And yes, videos for sure. I mean, people who don't go out there and, you know, put themselves out with these videos, they're missing out. I believe that, you know, it's not about perfection. It's just about getting out there and, you know, getting the message, you know, knowing your stuff and just putting it out there. Thank you so much, Steve. So I really appreciated this today.
Thank you.